when you want to have a conversation about why Black capitalism is like a farce, right? Like it's just like this idea that it's going to save us is just absolute nonsense. But then people come to you and they say, but this person made it, and this person made it, and this person made it, right? And they don't understand, and I firmly believe this, they don't understand that people are allowed to get to these spaces just for the intent of other people being able to point to them and say, like, look, 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 they got there. It's all it's all set up. Like this is a full framing of this capitalist lie that it can be done, right?
I at some point I gotta get more into this, but a buddy of mine put me on to this chapter in a book that I just got the other day called Black Nationalism in America, co-edited by the late John Bracey and two white scholars. And it's fascinating. It's got all these essays about Black nationalism in it. And one of the essays is from Ralph Bunche, titled "The New Negro Alliance, We Must Organize Our Purchasing Power." And it's, if I read it correctly, it's almost like a self-critique from Bunche. And it's included in here, described as a liberal project that benefits mostly in a wannabe Black middle class. And Bunche basically concludes in this short excerpt, or this what is for this book a chapter, that this Black capitalism thing, it's for a handful of liberal Negroes, and it's not going to. And all of this stuff about don't buy where you can't work and purchasing power and Black capitalism is ultimately an attempt at a class problem, really. Yeah, and I know, Ricky, I hear you. Ralph Bunche is no superhero, and that's sort of my point. That even and I think this is why they included it in here. I have to investigate more carefully, but the point is that even for a Ralph Bunche, he's acknowledging that this is for Black capitalism is just for a handful of Black people, at best. And but the pervasiveness of the narrative and the message and the argument around it is wild, is fascinating. Sorry, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Wasn't Bunche on some type of committee with Abram Harris, maybe even the boys? And it was like,
I honestly don't remember. It sounds, because his critique here sounds like an Abram Harris critique of because he's writing about the 30s and 40s. So I didn't mean to. I mean, it's something I got to come back to. I know we don't have that much time, but it just, when you were talking about it, Renee, I just finished reading that chapter. I mean, he's just saying, like, it don't do anything. Like it's not going to solve the problem that, and I don't think he uses the word capitalism, but he says the problem is with the economy, the society. It's not an issue of, as we would say today, financial literacy and so on and so forth. But and they also make the argument, and I get, given who the authors seem to be, the editors, that they make the point that it becomes a narrow nationalist argument that works against labor, all working labor. So even as they acknowledge the racism of the unions, and they talk a little bit about unions in that chapter and the relationship to these claims around Black business and buying Black, ultimately they say it's like a double-pronged problem. It's both not really radically nationalist, and it's also not committed to supporting all working people. And then ultimately what they advocate for, it's an interesting argument, because they're talking about, they say don't buy where you can't work. And then ultimately what you're doing is saying replace white workers with Black workers. You're not saying change the relationship of the worker to the employer. You're not talking about, and then ultimately the overall condition of all working people stays basically the same or worsens, because you're just swapping in and out. And then you're trying to get a little slice for that Black business or that Black today's world nonprofit argument to get people to siphon themselves in this direction. And then again, you're not doing the real nationalism thing, and you're also not doing the real labor thing. So it just becomes like this bull crap nonsense. I mean, it's so yeah, I get it. I was not excited to be reading Ralph Bunche in this. I wasn't like, this wasn't, but it was fascinating to see.
But it's important to have that information so that you can share that, right? So heads up to the audience, I'm bringing Jared back to Jersey. Finally figured it out. And I'm going to hold him hostage for like the day because I have a second group working on bringing him in the afternoon after he does something for me in the morning. But
so
this is what
see me with the plain background saying yes, by what. No, I'm just playing.
But that's what it's about. Like Ricky mentioned in the chat, like we have to organize, we have to do, like, you have to counter the propaganda, and that's exactly what we have to do, right? Like that's the point. You have these conversations, you bring Jared to explain to people what capitalism is and what this means, right? Like what does it mean when they talk about this non-existent Black buying power? Like how does that work in a real environment with the realities of the material conditions that are happening amongst communities? So that's part of the work, right? It is really like bringing the information to the people. So I think what Ricky said was important to point out, because you have to provide this education, you have to provide this information, you have to, I saw you you posted this morning or last night the stacks of books because somebody was like, you need to read Dr. Ball's book, and they're right? Like,
and then immediately haters came out. Somebody was saying it's weird for a tenured professor to tell his students that their economic hopes are a myth or something like that. And so I was like, it's weird to comment without reading the book and to suggest that I should have tenure and then mislead my students about work I've actually been doing. Like, so that's the goal, get tenure and lie to everybody. That's sort of but that's the point. I got tenure. I got a good job. There's no problem with the economy. There's no problem. Obviously, I have a job. What are you complaining about? Oh, you don't have a job, but I do.
Right.
So with health benefits. So, oh, you don't have health benefits. Oh, but that's irrelevant because I have a job with benefits. So let me just tell you how good it is to have a job with benefits. Oh, but you don't. Oh, it doesn't matter that you don't, because I'm telling you that. So that's what you want. That's what I'm supposed to do. That. I was just like, this is the weirdest thing. I'm like, it must be a triggering thing. Like, just read the joint.
Right. And it's what we talked about last week too. Like, it can't, if it always rolls back to like how this particular thing benefited one or two or a small group, or like where is the benefit for the full community, right? Like I literally have this argument all the time with people. Like, if all you care about is how this particular thing improved your particular individual situation, and you cannot stop for a second and recognize that the improvement of your individual particular situation did not result in an improvement for the overall community's material conditions, then you're missing the whole point. Like, the whole point is we all do, like, you just doing better means you do better. It would actually be better if we were all doing better, right? Like, if all of us are doing better.
You know what you should do though? Next time in class, you say, "You like how this healthcare look on me? Yeah, you like it? How about you tell your brothers and friends to sign up for class next year so I can keep this healthcare?" You should probably do that. I think that's your line, bro.
That basically is my line.
Yeah,
Black studies so Jared can have a job. No, but it's also true. Like, when I was down the street here in the transition center, or whatever they call them now, the community. I don't think we're not encouraged, at least, to say homeless shelter, houseless shelter, the shelter for people in transition, whatever they're calling it. When I was in there, what helped me get through it was that I could look outside and look in the magazine at all the rich black people and others who were just chilling. And I was like, it's going to trickle down to me. I just need to wait a little longer because their success is making it better for me. No, in fact, quite the opposite. It was like, I'm in here and they're living like that. I'm about to become a bigger problem for you. Like I'm not, this isn't, I don't feel like, I have never, man, my oldest was at one of her girlfriend's houses last night, had me driving to a part of this area I've never even seen before. And it's one of those, they're the one or two black families in this really, really, I mean, you meant to feel intimidated by the size of the houses and all that kind of stuff. And I was just in there hating. I was like, who did what to who to be living like this? And then my daughters were like, well, don't you think some people would look at us and feel that way? And I was like, yeah, and they should. I was like, because that's how because literally this neighborhood I'm in now, when I was living on the other side of Columbia, I was looking at this very neighborhood like, man, I'm about to be a problem for you. And then I drove out there and I'm sitting there like, man, I'm about to be a problem. This is a problem. This is terrible. This is not to be appreciated. People should not be living like this.
You that dude on belly that's eating a banana?
I'm about to drop a dime on you. You're damn right. I'm calling the revolution. I'm not calling the feds. I'm calling revolution. Get this is the neighborhood we need to be in right here.
I'm about to lower all y'all housing prices.
So
at least I know where to go when there's a crisis.
So our guest is probably going to come soon, but Yuri asked a question in the chat that I put in the private, I put in our list that I think is a really good question.
All right, let me see if I can scroll real quick. Is this the one?
That's the one. Do black leftists who harbor black capitalism buying power think that if they run their own mini capitalism will be more humane than that of global white supremacy? So I am sure that there are some who think that if I'm the rich person who's in charge, I can be better to my employees or whoever, and create like a little enclave of like nice community people, right? But the problem is, again, that's just for that small group of people, right? Like you still encounter the same problem where, yes, maybe at that particular job or place or building or whatever have you, things are better, but they still have to leave that job and go out into the wider world and society where all the problems remain in existence. So, and it's hard. Like we've had this conversation too, Jared, because I think you say the same thing. Like it's really hard to be like, I'm happy for you that you're doing your t-shirt business or you're making smoothies or, whatever thing that you found to do within your community that's, employing Black people and all these things. And I don't want to belittle that effort, but at the same time, it would be really helpful if people understood that is still an individual small effort in comparison to the wider problems that exist, because we just have a system problem. The system don't work. So anything that you do within a system that does not work, it's only going to have a minimal impact because the system don't work, period. Right? Like,
that's my only thing. If it was done within a certain political consciousness, it's not a problem. I know, but just very quickly before we get back to serious business, Yipper is exactly right. You're almost exactly right that I sound like Eric Cartman. So I thought if you take Eric Cartman, give him a Black father, a poorer white mother, and switch his reading of Mein Kampf for George Jackson, you're almost there. That's about it. Then you have almost me perfectly. Eric Cartman, you're very close, Yipper.